I'm joined today by Gareth, our soon-to-be new presenter. Hello, Gareth.
Hi, Andy. Nice to see you.
Yes, indeed. Now, let's just briefly talk about the show. We'll come back to that, and we want to touch a little bit into your life. But the show that will be starting soon, just give us the name and what can we expect?
Okay, so we're going with coffee table theology. It's a really good start when I can't even pronounce the name of my own show, isn't it? But the coffee table theology, and the idea is that I end up having lots of little kind of chats with some of my friends. Some of them are church leaders, some of them are theologians, some of them are just Christians seeking to make sense of life, really. And whenever we kind of get chatting about these things, we often kind of end up talking a little bit about theology, because that's the kind of the common touching point for us. And a few times I've thought, wouldn't it be amazing if a microphone was just listening to this chat? I wonder whether this would help people make sense of faith, make sense of theology, make sense of the world even at times. Some of it would be inane chatter, but some of it might be useful and helpful. And so the idea is that you're imagining sitting down with somebody in a coffee shop and you've got a few questions to ponder and chat through. And we're trying to just make it simple, relaxed, informal, down to earth, but also to come with some real answers to some questions and issues of theology.
Now, this we haven't got a start date as I record this. However, we are going to be doing these on Sundays between 1 and 3, which is exciting for me because 8 till 12, pure worship, just worship tunes for 4 hours. And then we have Dr. Michael Youssef from Leading the Way for an hour. And then it'll be you with Coffee Table Theology between 1 and 3 every Sunday. And then our usual schedule continues with Family Focus, myself and Joe till 6, Endurance 6 to 8. I say that because it's exciting because it plugs a gap in the middle of the day, which is like, we want something here that fits, but what fits? And when you said, what about this idea? I thought, that's absolutely perfect. And I've heard one of the pilots of this, and I was absolutely hooked because it was brilliant.
Well, I'm glad you thought that. I mean, it was good fun for me to do it. As I said, in many ways, it was just a chat with one of my friends, and we were just kicking some things about. What does this mean? What's this really actually mean when we live this out? So therefore, it's enjoyable to do, and I'm really glad that the initial vibes are good, and that it fits in with the program on Sunday. It feels like it fits nicely there, and sort of builds in around all the other good stuff that's already set up. So that's good to know.
And we're very excited because, hey, look, it's a new presenter, new show. That excites me a lot and excites the team. It's been great in the presenter chat. Just great, somebody else is joining us and what we're doing.
Yep, the presenter chat certainly has gone wild, hasn't it? I mean, I spend more time reading the WhatsApps from the presenter chat than I do my own job. But there we are. That's a sign of an enthusiastic and energized community, isn't it?
I think, energized, yes, especially when someone makes a mistake, because I think I have to be fair. In the group, if you say something wrong, you get the wrong time or the wrong word, all of a sudden, oh, we heard that, well done, that wasn't quite what you meant. And hey, look, we're keeping each other humble.
Indeed.
In a loving way.
It's a good environment. Yeah, definitely a good environment.
Fab. Right. We want to come back to the show again. I'll remind people of that shortly. However, you're doing this show, which is on theology. I am a bit of a theology nerd because I did Christian theology at school. Could have gone on to university and do a theology degree. Just didn't see the point for me. Not because anything wrong with theology, but like, what am I going to do this for? So I love theology. I just haven't studied it beyond school, even though I could have done. But I didn't know what to get a university for, so I got married and drove trucks, which was much better for me. So why are you doing this program, and how have you come to do this is kind of the ultimate question. But let's go back in time first. What's your own story of faith?
Well, okay, my own story of faith is that I kind of was brought up in a kind of nominally Christian home. My mum sort of took my sister and I to church. There wasn't much kind of. This is a church that was fairly kind of middle of the road, very sedate. I think I think I probably would have, if I heard somebody else describe their own church as theology as God exists and we ought to be nice. And that was kind of like, where, that's all you're going to got. So quite conservative. I mean, that's socially rather than theologically or politically, quite reserved. And not somewhere that kind of explained in any depth to me what the Christian faith was about. As I became a teen, I was joined by a friend of mine who actually was the guest on our pilot episode, which we might use as the first one. Who knows? And he witnessed to me at school. We met in year 8, so 13-year-olds, and he just spoke very normally and naturally about the Christian life to me at school, and that was key really to me coming to faith myself. At the age of 15, I attended a Christian event. There's a whole kind of long story there, but we travelled to this Christian event a couple of hours away from where I grew up down to Bournemouth. And as we arrived, we met. This is pre-mobile phones and pre-organised meetups. But as we drove into the car park, hundreds of cars in the Bournemouth International Centre car park, a family from our church walked through the door and met us right there in the car park. And the reason that's significant is because I was a shy, insecure kind of teenager. I would have just gone to the main meeting with my mum, who was taking me. And that would have been nice, maybe. And if God wanted to use that, I'm sure he would. But because I had a peer, they took me to the youth meeting, and I would say that I heard the gospel for the first time. I heard the late Dr. Rob Frost explain the Christian faith to me, and 400 or 500 other young people. And I was curious by the fact that there were 400 or 500 young people being excited about God. That didn't make sense to me. I equated God with my home church, which was not excitable, and certainly not to a 15-year-old anyway. And so that was kind of curious. But I also, my heart melted when I heard of a God that wanted a personal relationship with me, that would forgive my sins and give me a new beginning and a new start. And so I ended up, giving my heart to the Lord, really, and asking Jesus to be Lord of my life and to forgive me of my sin and give me a new beginning. And that was in April 1997. And so, I became a Christian at that point.
I love how even then there was a potential divergence. Do you go to one meeting or the other?
Yeah.
But because of somebody else, just one person effectively saying, "Hey, let's come this way," all of a sudden your life took a more dramatic, I suppose, more immediate switch.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is kind of getting into the grounds of theology, and I wonder about these things more than have a direct answer. But what would have happened if I hadn't, if that hadn't happened? Had God lined it all up? Was it pure chance? All that kind of stuff. And anyway, I guess the lesson of the story is there's no. Okay, we've just had a power cut.
Interesting.
At Moorlands College. All my lights and fan have gone out. Yeah, so for anybody that's watching this, I'm a ghost.
There you are.
Yeah. Right. Just give me. Do you want to just pause this, and I'll go and see whether anybody else, or is it just my?
We'll just pause the video. It's fine. We'll come back.
All right, let me come back in a second. I'll see what's happened.
Right now, you may notice if you're watching this, the screen has changed. The reason is there was a power cut at Moorlands College and beyond, so we had to get creative and do this a different way. So we've recorded this in 2 parts on different days, which is why if you're watching, you'll notice that the background is somewhat different behind Gareth, a different T-shirt, but it's fine. Let's just crack on. Now, we were talking when you had power about your faith journey and going to Moorlands College. So why did you go? What brought you to Moorlands?
Well, it's kind of kind of lots of gaps to fill in between kind of becoming a Christian and ending up at Moorlands. So the potted history is that I've been a Methodist minister for virtually all of my adult life. So I entered theological college at age 20, and I'm 43 now, and so all of those kind of years have been, apart from the last one, have been either working towards or in active ordained ministry in the Methodist Church. So that's kind of my background. Really, I just in very early on in sort of my first post, where I had lots of fun with lovely people, but I just was getting a bit frustrated in lots of areas, and I just thought doing so a bit more study would not only equip me better for the role I was doing, but would also just give me some space to kind of scratch that itch, really. And so I did a master's degree first of all, and really enjoyed doing that. And the people that taught me at that level were encouraging me to kind of do some further study. And so really, my master's, then my PhD began a kind of a bit of a catharsis, really. But also for Laura and I, Laura's my wife, I'd done ministry all of my adult life. So if this came to a point where I couldn't hack it anymore, or I just generally had enough, or anything worse, I always felt a bit vulnerable that I had nothing to kind of fall back on, no trade. I'm good for nothing really in many ways. So and therefore, but kind of teaching was something in the future I thought might be helpful. So doing the PhD continued that kind of bit of outlet for some frustration of mine, but also was with a view to thinking, well, one day this would be helpful. This would be a way in to a world where I could teach and train other people for Christian ministry in its widest form. And then I just sort of completed my PhD, and it just came to a time where I just thought I'm probably now ready to do something different, and to make a move out of the Methodist Church, really, as well, for a whole load of reasons. And Moorlands came up. It came up sooner than we thought, and the ethos of Moorlands, aligns with where I'm coming from. We are training women and men for Christian ministry in all its breadth, and seeking to kind of apply theology to everyday life, and that's kind of in my wheelhouse, really. And my studies have been around kind of leadership and mission and the growth of the church. And in the end, a vacancy cropped up in that particular space, and so we kind of felt in all of that, we kind of felt God's call. But for us, it was fairly short. A fairly short kind of notice period from leaving our church ministry, which we were having great fun in, to coming to do this. But we just kind of felt, all in all, it was what God wanted. The timing worked for us, a bit of stability for the next few years for children. It all added up. So here we are. So I've been here about a year now.
And now joining Pure 24/7 Radio, which of course is the pinnacle. Forget the masters and the PhD. Being a presenter on Pure Radio.
That is right. And of course that comes from, in many ways, that's one of the kind of links between my old world and this world, because we originally made contact, as I'm sure you remember, because a very eager colleague of mine circulated to various media outlets that we were doing, some projects in our church in Plymouth at Christmas time. And
Thousand Knitted Angels.
Yeah. And you kindly ran it for us, picked it up, and then from that, interview, I did a few sort of devotion thought for the day slots on the brunch show with Nathan, and it was from there really that this kind of like, well, I wonder, could we collaborate with them thing in the future has come about. So in many ways, being part of the Pure family is the link between my two worlds recently.
That's quite sweet. I hadn't actually. I remember doing the Thousand Knitted Angels, which I thought was brilliant, but I hadn't seen us as a sort of a link between your old word and your current one, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is.
Right, now let's get on to the show, because everything you've talked about just perfectly blends into what we're talking about. So Coffee Table Theology, this is going to be a Sunday lunchtime show from 1 till 3. What can we look forward to in this? Now, I'm referenced before we had the power cut that I've heard the pilot, and I thought, this is so exciting. This is so good, because we hear the word theology, and I think most people would go, heavy, dark, depressing, help. But actually, theology is really exciting, and that's what I loved about what you did, because you took stuff that is not boring in any way and made it even more exciting.
Well, I hope that is what's going to happen. I mean, on one level, you kind of hear the word theology. It's on a Sunday lunchtime after a big kind of Sunday lunch. You think, this is going to be the perfect soundtrack for my afternoon snooze. But I really hope that isn't the case, and I'm confident it won't be. I mean, the passion through all of my ministry really has been to make the Bible accessible to as wide an audience as possible. And I think to do that well, you need to have a decent amount of knowledge. You need to work hard, but equally, there is some kind of, I think there's still a gap to communicate the deep things of the Christian faith in the everyday language. And And so the whole kind of concept between coffee table theology is to do that, is to kind of take kind of theological concepts and try and express them in a simple way so that everyday people can understand them. And the concept being, of going for a kind of a chat with a friend of mine, sitting around a coffee table in, a high street coffee shop or a bespoke one, and just chatting. And in my world, quite quickly, some of our conversations will go towards kind of philosophy, theology. And we're not talking high level, but we're just chatting about how we see the world, what we think God's up to, how does the Bible speak into that, etc. And I've come away from some of those times thinking, oh, if only there was a microphone here. I wonder how many people would have, really enjoyed that, listening in to that conversation. And people have often said to me that one of the things I'm able to do well is to, bring clarity to something that seems complex. And if that is the case, then I'm excited, not just for my part, but certainly for my guests, really. And some of those guests I know because I see them, I work with them, I'm friends with them. I've seen them do exactly what we hope we want to do with the show: express complex things in a simple way.
What I really enjoyed, I mean, the pilot was brilliant, and it can only get better from there. But what I really enjoyed was you're not just teaching theology, which can be a bit hard, it can be a bit dry if you're not careful, but you're not even doing that. What you're doing is just saying, I have a struggle with this. What do you think? And you're engaged in a conversation with somebody else, another human being who's saying, yeah, don't know, maybe I got a thought on that, maybe I haven't. And then you're sort of thrashing it out together, exactly like you're saying around a coffee table. And that's what I got excited about, because this is real day, ordinary stuff. We use the word theology. We don't have to. We just say stuff of life. What do you think about it? And that's effectively what you're doing.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, theology is thinking, discussion about God in its simplest form. And, God, I believe that God is in all and through all. He's in every aspect of our life and relationships and networks, work, everything. And everything, therefore, has got the potential for God to communicate with us and to make us think. And so, in its very kind of simplest form, you're exactly right. It is kind of pondering the things of life through a kind of God-centered lens. I mean, that would be, kind of my description, really.
Now, I know I referenced this earlier. I did Christian theology at school. If you're listening, this is A-levels, so 16 to 18, pre-university. And I was a non-denominational Christian in my head. I was at a Church of England school, the Anglican Church. We had a Muslim, we had Methodists, we had some Roman Catholics, we had some I don't have a faith, but I'm interested in learning about the Bible. And of course, mid to late teens, we had one or two conversations, some of which were not quite as calm as others, but it was really good. And I loved chatting with a guy who was a Muslim, because he was quite hard on various bits and pieces, but he was also a lovely guy. And we had some great chats. And that's the thing. When you start having conversations, you realize, there's some ground here we can talk about.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating that the Methodist, she had issues with alcohol, which was sort of fascinating when you think about Methodism. The Catholics had some real issues with things. You're thinking, okay, that's fascinating. And actually, it was brilliant. And I realized by the end of those 2 years, I've got a lot of maturing to do. I've got a learning to do. But actually, a lot of what we're doing is just, but what does that mean? How does it apply to our life? And we had a very good facilitator of two. We had a Catholic school and a Church of England school with two very, very good sets of teachers who helped us to work through it. I still remember to this day. I'm curious what your thoughts on this one are. We did the Catholic guy who was about to be a Catholic priest and didn't become a teacher. Lovely chap. He said, right, tomorrow's lesson, bring in whatever you have on toast, bring it in with you. Fair enough. He bought jams and butter and, marmalade, whatever. Okay, here we go. And he got a bottle of fortified wine too. And he also got some matzos, which is the Catholic sort of wafer bread they use. Okay. And we basically had a lesson eating matzos and drinking fortified wine. By the end of the lesson, we were thinking, what's this got to do with anything? And he said, it's just a great way of having a conversation. And I loved that.
Yeah. No, I mean, that sounds right up my street, really. So, I mean, I think as well, I think that the whole kind of social media kind of culture, soaked culture, means that there's very little room for nuance. so places like X or whatever, you've got 140 characters to set out your view. You've got to be blunt and direct, and somebody else sets out the things that get attention are the extreme views, and those are the things that explode and get retweets and all sorts of stuff. I think as well, our media, it's probably a bit less so now, but certainly, 5-10 years ago, was intent on, here's an issue, we get somebody from one end of the spectrum on here, somebody on the other end of the spectrum here, and we'll let them fight it out. And so you end up with kind of people going into factions, and I'm either this or that. And you see that, I see that in some of particularly the younger students that I teach, that coalesce or self-define around a particular kind of faction or author or way of thinking. And of course, when they actually discover that somebody that thinks very differently to them is actually a nice guy who I can go to the pub with, or I might even start fancying the girl that thinks completely different things about women in leadership to me. Suddenly, those things become more space for creative dialogue and conversation and curiosity. How does that work? What does that mean for you? Tell me about that. And that's the space for conversation and for learning, I guess, as well, from each other and for different things. I just literally read a book in preparation for something this week called Streams of Living Water by Richard Foster. It's a fairly old book, 25, 30 years old probably. And what he's trying to say is, look, here are the kind of great classical streams of the Christian faith, from kind of very contemplative, reflective, kind of monastic life to kind of Pentecostal charismatics on the other, and everything in between. And he's trying to just say, look, we can all learn things from these different streams, and they could be a gift to us if we're willing to have the humility to receive them.
I learned a lot in those 2 years. I learned a lot about myself. Quite a few rough edges were knocked away. And actually, I've just finished reading again The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. And there's one particular moment which is exactly what you're describing, where they're in a prisoner of war camp. People are being murdered. It's a horrendous, horrid place. And Corrie ten Boom, her sister Betsy, brought in a Bible. They're the only ones in the camp that have this miracle Bible, and they have these church services. And there's the two of them. I guess they would be described as Protestants. Probably you've got Catholics, you've got Greek Orthodox, all in that context of we all love God, we all worship God, and you've got all these amazing, very what I call actually diverse ways of worshiping God, all thrown into the mix. And she described it as, this has got to be what heaven is like, not just as Pentecostals rule, Baptists are the best, Anglicans is the only way. Do you know what? There's pieces of those. I can happily go across Pentecostal to Anglican, and I still love the services. If people love God, I'm in.
Yeah, I think I entirely agree. I mean, the one thing I just want to throw in is, I think for me, we've unity has to center around common truth, and that. So I think that there's a tendency sometimes to give the impression that as long as we're nice to each other, anything goes. Now, I'm a theologian for a reason, because I think that isn't acceptable. I think there are some things that are essentials, and that we can coalesce around. But that aside, I entirely agree with you that the that sense of keeping the main thing, and I mean, even with people that I vehemently disagree with, even on fundamental things, I hope that the older I get, the more I go with, okay, well, what can I learn about God, about myself, about that person, about their context from this conversation? And it's okay to say, that was a really nice guy, I completely disagree with him on that, or goodness, that guy's annoying, but he's right about this sort of stuff. So those are perfectly reasonable things. And I think, as I said, because of our lack of nuance, we almost are like, okay, well, we have to write that person off because they don't agree with X, Y, Z. We write that woman off because she doesn't, do this. And of course, the more you do that, you're left with an ever decreasing circle of people that you can even talk to. So, and that just for me gets a bit boring. So, I enjoy hanging out with all sorts of different people. And on a good day, I'm asking the humble, curious question: okay, God, what can I learn through this encounter, through this conversation?
Like that was the thing I was about to say. We either go into a scenario saying, right, you need to agree with me, or I hate you and you're terrible, or we can go into any given scenario and thinking, how can I become more like Jesus Christ? How can I develop my own self? How can I become a better person in the world today, learning something from somebody that's doing something good over there? Hey, let's take that and let's think, how does that apply to my life? And we have one of the two, but even that's kind of polarized. Because as you say, some of the younger students are coming in, well, I can't even talk to them. I won't even look at them, perhaps, because they have this. Well, yeah, but you have this perspective, and actually you both love God. So find a way of working together.
Yeah, and they do. I mean, they do. It just takes time. And, it's, I'm caricaturing a little bit, but it takes time. And I guess that's the gift and the challenge of Christian community, isn't it? That for us, most of our students are chucked together from all sorts of different backgrounds, perspectives, denominations, and then they have to live 24/7, sharing, there's communal toilets, obviously gender specific, but we don't have ensuite rooms. So you're thrown together in all sorts of circumstances, and that it's nothing like that to test the patience, is there?
No, but that can only be a good thing because in life we have to learn. We can't have Twitter conversations because you actually have to know not just what you think, but that what you think may not be what somebody else thinks. And you know what? That might be okay. They might have a better take than you on this thing that you live your life around, because we're not all perfect. We're not God.
No, indeed.
And effectively, we've just had a coffee table theology because I like talking about this stuff.
Yes, I mean that I agree. I mean that's exactly it. So I mean, so I cited a scholar, so we've got a kind of an author reference in there if we want to make it real theology. But and it is. I agree. This is exactly the sort of thing that I imagine happening. So I completely agree with that.
Gareth, welcome to Pure Radio. It's such an exciting time. We've had 3 new presenters in such quick succession. It's really exciting. You are one of those, which is fab. The presenters group is fun. It's becoming more fun. You said that earlier, but welcome. Coffee Table Theology every Sunday from 1 till 3 with Gareth. If you want to tune into that, you can do. It'd be great. So you've now, and this is nice. I said this before. You've connected the day because we've got Pure Worship from 8 till 12. We've got Dr. Michael Youssef at 12 o'clock. You're then on from 1 till 3. Family Focus from 3 till 6, 6 till 8. We have Endurance with the Endurance team on Faith and Fitness, and we have more plans beyond that. And it's nice because you finally filled the bit in the middle that was really bugging me.
There we are.
Which is really cool. That's not the only reason you're here. Just saying, it's not a gap filler. Gareth, thank you. It's been great to talk to you and introduce you to our listeners. And we're looking forward to seeing your show and all that does and the work you're doing at Morelands College. Gareth Higgs, thank you.
Thank you very much.